I think what I'm about to tell you, you have to take with a grain of salt, because how I arrived at these, and they're not even conclusions, they're just kind of thoughts. How I arrived at these thoughts comes from a perspective of someone that knows that it's not relatable and knows that the lesson is not generalizable. And I want you to understand that as you watch my videos about how I go about things, I have a particular skill set, mindset, experience level, threshold, and I have a very particular reward system and like needs and wants that are completely different than I feel like most people. So as you're watching me explain whatever I'm going to explain, future, past, present, I want you to kind of think about this as like a capsule. It's not for you, and I'm not telling you that this is what you should go out and do. You should be like me. You should think like me. If you don't think like me, then you kind of have to rearrange your thoughts to understand from my perspective. I'm just trying to give you a glimpse behind the curtain of somebody who might think different. And I think that that's okay to share my perspective and it not be relatable. I think it's okay to share my perspective and it not to be healthy for most people. So I just want to explain to you how I developed my own way of things, and it's not for advice taking, right? So even if you wanted to internalize some things from me, it's going to get meshed with your own web of how you do things. And it's not going to be the exact same because, you know, everything wired in your system is gonna be different. So I want you to remember that as I explain things to you. And I kind of think that that will help with just like looking at it maybe as not entertainment value, but just kind of like to expand your mind to like some people really do have different needs and wants. And the arrival at the different needs and wants is very embedded. And we're gonna talk about that today. So I made a video yesterday about what I thought was a nice wrap up of last week, but I purposely left out major parts of the story because I was not ashamed, but I didn't want to deal with people not understanding, and I didn't want to deal with I told you so's, and I don't want to deal with like a lot of stuff that can come from looking like a moron when you go back on your word about stuff. But like the more I thought about it, the more I'm just like, that part of the story is more interesting and more important to tell because of how it impacts me than anything that I was sharing. And if there's anything that I've learned, it's like I don't want to hide things that are like pivotal moments, and I don't, just because they're hard. Like it's hard to be like, oh hey, I learned this thing, which might come as like a no crap to you, but it was still important to me. So instead of hiding behind, you know, factual things that did happen and only talking about them, I'm going to touch upon some stuff that I've been not explaining. And I think that that's more impactful and more important. But I did want to say that caveat in the beginning about, you know, I don't think that this is healthy for everyone. I'm not even too sure if what I do and why I do it is healthy for me. That's undetermined. But like, I'm okay with it. So yeah, we'll get into it. Last week I went on a date. The day after I talked with you guys, I went on a date, and I want to explain to you that it was with someone who I felt was at my mental capacity. We studied the same thing, like I said, and so there's a camaraderie there. There's like an understanding that he understands people. I understand people. And there was like vulnerability. There's like a lot of things that I liked, but like the main thing that was different about this person was that this person was kind of like a self-proclaimed pretty boy with a romantic side of him that would come out. And that's different than other people that I am normally attracted to. Normally I'm attracted to people who deny the romance aspect of most things. They're not cutesy. They like avoid that. And like there's elements of cutesy, but it's not in the wooing. It's not in the, they're not sweet. This person was self-proclaimed sweet, and he thought that parts of that were quote unquote humiliating about himself, and he likes to make women swoon. And I'd never really been much attracted to that, because most of the time the sweet guys were wrapped up in a package that I didn't like. It was either they were too nice, they were too attentive, they were too gettable, right? So I didn't really like them, but this time it was coupled with a sad boy. It was coupled with somebody who was complex mentally, hence like the psychology thing. And he kind of explained to me that he had a thought process that liked the gray, that liked understanding like fixed elements of the black and white, but he lived in the gray and he pondered the gray. But he wasn't really like a talker, and he wasn't really big on discussing his things unless prodded, and I like to prod, so it was kind of like a match made in heaven at that point. I wasn't really thrilled that he had skills that were good for making ladies swoon, because I was kind of impervious to that, right? Like I liked him already for a different element, and that particular thing added to the mix, the whole charming suave thing, coupled with his good looks, was kind of an interesting dynamic that I hadn't ever really said yes to, because those things hadn't really come into play in one person that I'd encountered yet that actually liked me back, right? So there was that. So anyways, the reason I lay that out is because it seems like I don't know what to do with that, because it seems like that type of person is like a wolf in sheep's clothing to me. And I'm more used to wolves in wolf's clothing. And I'm not saying all pretty boys that are romantic and smart and complicated and kind of a sad boy are bad, but it just is different. And it's different in a way that I don't have the skills to, I don't anticipate the fallout, because I don't understand it mentally. I don't understand that package deal mentally, what they do, how they, it's unpredictable to me. So anyways, keep that in mind. It's unpredictable to me, and it doesn't feel like my favorite type of game to play, but it's fun, and it's intoxicating when you're being swooned. So anyways, even though I know the swooning is happening, 'cause like I studied psychology too, I have books and books of like personality traits kind of like lined up in my head from like all the experiences I've ever had, and all the questions I've ever asked people, and all the little things that have ever happened in my life, and the outcomes of that. I pay attention, and I have little collections of personality traits, and it's in the library of my entire like brain, right? So I wait for things to fall into something that I've seen before, and then I add like in a little asterisk, like this is what happens with this personality type, and then this is what happens when they either are self-assured, their self-esteem is low, they have resources, they don't have resources. Like, it's never the same type of person. Even though it's similar, it's always a little different. It's always a little different. That's why getting to know people is so fun. That's why it's never, my curiosity doesn't just shut off after the brief introduction, after I've categorized them. It's not even like I know that I'm doing this, it's just that I am doing this. This is the way my personality works. I have books to think on, and then I make book reports later for myself. Does that make sense? I have a whole library of information, and then the way that my brain works and the way that my personality works is that I will think on things and I'll make connections from a higher level of all the things that I've seen, and I am insatiable when it comes to I want to know about people, and I'm excited about people. So hence, I was excited to come across this combination. And so I got swept up in him, and he got swept up in me, because I am his own interesting kind of enigma. And when you combine those two, it's kind of exciting. It's unpredictable what the outcome is. It could be crash and burn. It could be good. It could be like a lot of different things. So, I mean, it could be a lot of different things for any combination of people, really. But when you take two people who are equally kind of complex, it can be, it's not like a pissing match, like who is more interesting. It's like, I don't know how to describe it, but it's intoxicating, right? It's one of those combinations that's intoxicating. So it had to be obviously followed down to a date. We had to go on a date. It was mandatory at that point. So that's the setup for going into the date. It's intense, it's good, and there's a lot of like, well, you could be what I'm looking for, you make me excited, but there's also like the swooning thing. There's like the knowing that he's a pretty boy, and then knowing that he's attractive. Meanwhile, I'm like, I don't really know if I'm attractive. Like, I feel like I am, I feel like I'm confident with that, but like, I'm not really too sure on my ability to keep people interested in me. So the attraction, like, I am knowing in certain ways that I'm interesting, but he knows a certain way that he's attractive to people based on his looks, right? He knows that, he knows how to use that. And I know how to use my interesting, not against people, but with people. I know how to use that. So we come in and we combine, and the date was very similar to how we were together before, and I liked that. I liked that there was no shy drawback. I liked that there was a continuation process of who you presented yourself to me before we met, and who you presented yourself to me as we're meeting. Like, to me, that's important, to have that congruent nature of things. I don't want to arrive to a date and they're completely different. That's disappointing, because I was excited about this version, and it's very easy to portray yourself as a different version when there's not the other person sitting next to you, right? So he matched my level of intensity, and I could tell that like it was like kind of a challenge for both of us, because it was we're both introverts. I think he's introverted in a different way. He's kind of like introverted sad boy, and I'm kind of just introverted because, you know, I don't really like a lot of things that externally happen in my world, and it's more fun in my internal world. And so I just block out a lot of stuff, and so that's just my personality to like think on things. It's not my personality to think on things and go into like a downward spiral, or, you know, to just be so disappointed with the world. I just shut it out because I'm interested in what I'm doing. I'm kind of selfish like that. So and my life is set up to do that, right? My life is set up to be the most however like I want to be, because there's not a lot of pull on my attention. My attention can always be focused on myself. So anyways, that's why I get such a saturation of my own personality. I don't really have to share or compromise a lot now. I live by myself, right? So when you, I have like a hair on my nose. When you have two introverts that combine like this, it's exciting to see what will happen, but it's also, because like most of the time I feel an introvert has like a unique and complicated inner world, and the discovery of that is really, really fun. I think extroverts are interesting as well, but they derive their energy differently. And our energy kind of like happened because of the combination of both of us. I think I would have just been a chill person at the bar had I just been by myself, but I was like bubbly and I was excited, and he, like, I fed off his energy and he fed off mine. He like had an underlying intensity. And then what happened was the romantic part of the swooning kind of morphed into, I don't even know how to describe it. It morphed into like not using those skills anymore, but like acting on visceral things that a guy that would have been more straightforward would have just kind of told me more up front. So what I thought was happening based upon everything was that he was kind of like interviewing me to be maybe a person that he would date for a couple of times at least, that he was looking for like a person to add into his life, like girlfriend status. He wasn't looking for a one-night stand. He wasn't looking for somebody that wasn't meaningful. And that was he could have had that intention, honestly. He could have had that intention. But then once he met me, the intention turned to very one-night standy. And I was already excited to experience him. And so while that didn't exactly follow through with what we talked about, because I wasn't really interested partly in that anymore, but I was freshly not interested in that. I'm still always interested in finding my best sexual match. I'm always interested in exploring people in a healthy way physically. It turned to that at the end of the date, and it turned, there was I didn't foresee that happening, because I thought it was something different. Because a wolf in wolf's clothing would have just tried to talk to me about the hookup. I wasn't all that sexual before with him. I was more like exploratory on like what it meant to be kind of like swooning. I don't know. I was more into that because that was a new experience for me. And I immediately recognized the twist, because that's how most people present themselves at the end of that date to me, just very visceral. And I was not shocked that it happened like that. I was just a little bit disappointed at the change, because usually I know what I'm getting into, and this time I felt like a little bit not blindsided, because clearly if you have a connection and then you'd want to sleep with people, like I get that, but it was like, usually I choose that with intention, which seems weird, but I didn't choose that with intention this time. I had the intentions of getting to know him and to, like, you know, we talked about taking things slow, and then there was the offer on the table, not the offer, that makes it sound bad, but then there was the discussion on the table that was like, what do you want to do after this? And it was very clear that he wanted to hook up, and I was like, oh, okay, but like, oh, this is not how I saw things going. So anyways, there was nothing wrong with that. There was nothing wrong with the whole like explanation of what he wanted. There was nothing wrong with his skills of being a ladies man thing. There was nothing wrong with all of that, except for it just felt more icky after he stopped talking to me. So we went home, we did it. I don't know if it was all as good as like I'd hoped or whatever, and everything seemed kind of okay, but it had elements of, like, the hookup had elements of how it feels with the wolf in wolf's clothing. It felt like this was a bait and switch. It felt like this was his skills in getting laid. It felt like I was expecting kind of romance and what I got was the usual Tinder dude, right? Like, that's how it, like, I've seen that Tinder dude before. I'm completely fine with that type of Tinder dude. I have no qualms about people being very upfront about things, and like, it's almost nice to know, okay, like, I want to treat you nicely, but after this we're kind of done. Like, I understand that. I have experience with that, and it's not heavy on my heart. It felt bad to me because I felt like I was served a different type of lie. I like it when it's more straightforward. I like it when I know what kind of game I'm playing. And I like it when I understand that most people would not go on a date with somebody if they were like, I'm going to romance you. I'm going to make you fall in love with me, sort of, kind of. I'm going to immerse myself with you, and then I'm going to drop you like a hot potato. Do you still want to go on this date? Most people would be like, no, no thank you. I would probably be like, sure, that sounds wonderful, right? Because that seems kind of exciting, and we'll get to that. We'll get to that after. But it felt kind of like that. It felt like I can't trust a type of person that is going to lie to my face. And maybe they don't know that it's a lie until the lie actually happens. For example, maybe they don't know their intentions for me until they get home and they realize they bit off more than they could chew, or they didn't want to chew what they bit off, right? Like, while you're in it, while you're in the immersion process of what online dating kind of uniquely makes, I think that you can get very wrapped up in the inertia of what's going on, especially when both of you are like complex and magnetic in your own way. So when that happens, there's like this sweeping up kind of quality, and then you get back to your own house, and then you get back and away from the situation, and it's in the lull, right? I've talked about that with you before. There's all this kind of like tension of everything. There wasn't a lot of sexual tension this time, because I said I wasn't trying to do that or explore that with him. I made it known that I was sexually interested in him because he was hot and he was attractive to me personality wise, and I liked his brain. But so there was like blunt talks about that, but it wasn't like it wasn't like me and Ghost Guy. It wasn't like that where we basically just exchanged ridiculous forms of like, I want to do this to you all day long, right? So it wasn't like that. It was more it was different anyways, but with the same outcome. So the next morning I waited and I waited to see if he would talk to me, because like I have a long history of talking to somebody who would ignore me for a long time. It made me hard like that, made me hardened to ignoring. So because of that person, I can withstand weeks of not hearing from somebody and it doesn't really bother me. I notice it, but it doesn't really bother me to the point where like I am compelled to reach forward. So like I have, it's not self-respect. I just have experience holding back it's like sitting in my uncomfortable. The uncomfortable being like, I'm in this state where I don't know if we're gonna go on another date. We've talked about that because that's how we said goodbye. And that is the, you know, the form of the lie. But it's very hard to tell somebody that you don't want to see them right after you've hooked up with them or had like a kind of like amazing date where you did all these romantic things or whatever with a stranger. It's very like hard to be like, well, actually I'm gonna take all that back. So like I don't blame him for, you know, carrying on the lie. I'm just trying to explain to you that this is how it evolved. So the next morning I wait, and I wait like a good amount of time, and then like I like to tell people kind of right after. I like to tell them as if they've prompted me, like say good morning or something. I like to kind of, if I'm not into them, I will kind of say, hey, thanks for your time, blah, 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 but I'm not interested in this, like blah, 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 right? Like you saw me do that with the farmer's market person. He texted me the next morning and I was like, I can't do this. I can't lie. I need to kind of explain why we're done. So I texted him, and I texted him the opposite. I was like, I still like you after we've met. Like I gave him the reassurance that most people would want, I think, after like kind of hanging out. And he didn't give me the reassurance back. And I read between the lines, and then I texted him a few more times, and then he just stopped messaging me. And then it's been like maybe about a week and something later, and he still hasn't messaged me. So backtracking, it's like he decided he didn't want to for whatever reason, and that's totally fine. It just feels icky, and it feels like a more complicated lie than I really enjoy. It was a different type of game that I was playing with him. It's always a game. And maybe that's not great, but I always feel like it's a game. And not even a nefarious game. It's just kind of like an uneasiness that it's hard because it's like you want whatever outcome you want, but like the game is always switching, and even if the intentions were spelled out for you clearly beforehand, the intentions of what's happening on the date gets kind of complicated. After the date, even more so complicated. So I feel like it's always a game, and it's like, what am I good at? I'm good at certain things about this game. I have tolerance for certain things about this game. I have wants for how the game should go, right? Like everybody comes into dating or interacting with an unknown, because like dating is very unknown. I think interacting with people in general is an unknown, because people are their own entity that's very complex, and they're not going to explain to you every single thing about what's going on. And even if they did, it might be not actually as accurate as it could be, because maybe they're just not aware. So you always have to remember that people are kind of like this moving part. Even if you think you know them, they're always kind of like a changing and shifting moving part with fixed elements, yes, but they're changing and moving. And so to expect on a date with somebody brand new that you met on the internet who is self-proclaimed suave, then it's kind of stupid to be sad about that. I was sad about like what the end was. People have all the right in the world to change their minds about how they feel about you. But I think what was sad to me was the level of emotional intelligence at the end. When I was giving him reassurance, that was the perfect opportunity to break his lie and to kind of say, well, I don't really want to explore this with you. And he didn't even have to give me like a reason. Some people, I think, don't give you a reason because they want to close the door, but like not close the door all the way. So like if he wanted to close the door all the way, he could have said, thank you for thinking that about me, blah blah blah, or whatever however boys like react. I think like a girl would react that way. They wouldn't say thank you after what I said, but he would just kind of like come back in his own guyish way, and he would give me something that indicated there was a closed door. Some people like to have a closed door metaphorically, but also to leave it open. And so currently right now, because there was like no texting after I kind of said that, he didn't say that back, but he didn't not say that back, right? So it's kind of an ambiguous closed door. You would think that a ghosting would be a closed door. And I don't actually like really blame him for the ghosting. It just felt like a game that I don't like playing because I don't know the rules of this. And it's like kind of more of a dangerous game. As I said, I tend to pick guys who are upfront about what they want from me. They're very upfront. They're like, I don't want anything from you really except to fuck you. And I'm like, great. And that fit into my my short-term thinking. And the reason why I like that is not healthy for most people. I'm not even sure if that's healthy for me, but I can admit to you that that's exciting. It's a game that I like to play. And I feel like it's a game that I know very well. And it's its own thing that we can talk about. But to finish off with this one, it's like he had a different game, and I don't know if I like to play it. It felt more lie-y, and it felt more like a dirty lie in hindsight. But I can be okay with understanding that people do have the right to change their minds and to not explain their exploratory process of whether or not they like you in their life, right? How you fit in somebody's life and all that stuff. So in the morning, I was discovering that he wasn't going to message me back. This happened around, I don't know, 10 or so. And then by noon, it was kind of done. And I was kind of thankful that the whole swept up romance thing like happened within the course of like 4 days. So, you know, I liked that part. I liked that there wasn't like this whole, I like that it just was efficient. Because therefore I could, like, wasn't that damaging. Do you see that? Like, but it does feel like rejection, even though I can understand it logically, and I don't fault him for what happened afterwards. I don't love it, but I can understand it from even his perspective, from the little perspective that I did understand about him from the time that I kind of talked with him. So I do understand it. I don't love it. It's not a game I like to play. And maybe I had more blind spots in that game, right? Because it was a new one. But a few hours later, I get messages from people that I had metaphorical closed doors with. And it was like all of a sudden I was validated again. Here I was being kind of like rejected by somebody and then somebody came back to like basically like grovel at my feet and want to like try again. And I was like, because I bring this up because here's the thing about patterns. I have a pattern, good or bad, mostly probably bad. I have a pattern which I go on dates with people and then they don't talk with me anymore. They don't really want anything from me after that. And I'm beginning to see my part in it, and I'm beginning to see their part in it. And I'm also beginning to understand things about the greater society that plays into it. But when this happens over and over and over again, I began to feel badly. And like no matter what kind of thing that I did to like work on myself or to change the outcome later, it's easy in your hardest, most hurt moment to boil something down to something easy to understand instead of understanding that it's nuanced. In your hurt, it's like I think your brain tries to quickly understand what happened instead of try to see what actually is going on. And it's too complicated because like you're already hurt. Like it's in heightened awareness. It needs like a quick fix to like soothe. And to soothe equals you pick something that makes sense, that's justifiable. You don't pick something that's out of nowhere that doesn't make any sense for the reason. You pick something that might be the reason. And very much so, I usually pick, well, I must be just ugly, or I must be just blah, blah, blah. And it's like completely ignoring, maybe they're not just interested in what I provide. Maybe they're just horny dudes, and I always go after horny dudes or like whatever. And maybe they, all these different reasons I always ignore during this phase. And it's after the fact, after I'm not hurt anymore, that I understand that it's more nuanced than the black and white. I understand gray. I understand different shades of gray, and I understand how much black you have to put into the white in order to get some gray. So the fact that my hurt brain will go to a black and white explanation just to soothe itself is frustrating for me as a intellectual. But it's like I just get that that's part of the process. And like I don't stay very long in that, but I do dip into that. And I think that that's just part of being human, or at least that's part of how I am a human. So anyways, this happens, I'll have a pattern, and then afterwards I blame myself. And then afterwards, I feel really badly about myself. And I kind of like take away all the confidence that I've given to myself over time. And then I have a few hours of sitting in that lull. And it's not pleasant, but it's okay. And then afterwards, maybe it's a few days, maybe it's a week or something, I will kind of forget all about that. And then I will kind of start my self-care process, and I will start thinking about instances in which and why that is not true. I will gather the evidence that I'd been gathering, just like I gather personality traits and behaviors from other people. I gathered them from myself. And I also gather, and I put them in my little tomes of books in my library, and I like kind of try to see the pattern. I try to see how things are working together, and I kind of make a report for myself. This report is not final. There's no period at the end. It can always be revised, because what I am taking from the outside world and what I'm understanding about myself at the time is super flexible. But there are fixed elements. Like if I felt badly that our sex was bad or whatever, I will go to all of my experiences that I've had with other people, and I'm just like, well, factually, other people liked such and such, and so maybe it was just they didn't like this, right? Or like some people like the way that I interact with them, and so I you know, factually, I will just check off the things that I checked as this must be so, and I will uncheck them. Does that make sense? I will uncheck them, and I will start to emerge from the black and white, and I will live more gray, and I will understand things on a more gray continuum, I guess. And the thing about other people is they don't explain a lot of stuff, and so you have to sift through your knowns. You have to sift through your knowns in order to get back to how you feel about yourself before this whole thing happened. So that's my process, but my process got interrupted this time. And I arrived to the checked off boxes of the gray a lot sooner, because I had validation that somebody else that had kind of a revolved closed door with me came back, and he validated that he wanted me. And since our transaction was purely sexual, I was feeling badly, by the way, about how our sexual interaction went with the romantic kind of pretty boy. And that was what I was kind of like hooked on, as far as like, maybe we just didn't connect that way. And I was feeling badly that I wasn't skilled, right? I was feeling badly that this and this and this. But somebody very picky, who, selfish asshole person, had come back and basically validated this sexual part of me. And I was like, I checked off the boxes of, well, this guy didn't like it and this guy likes it, he's come back. It was very validating for me. So yeah, so immediately I got swept up in, don't sit in your hurt, try to play this game with this assholey person, because this is a game you like to play. And why do I like to play this game? I like to play this game because I'm good at this game. So this is me after I've already edited the first part of the video. I've changed and I'm just about to go for a walk actually when I'm done. I'm going to stop the video here, because as I was making the video, it was just kind of like flowing from me naturally, and so I didn't really realize how long it was getting. And by the way, I did have like mascara all over my face. I'm super sorry that you had to like see that the whole time. Hopefully it wasn't distracting. I had picked a waterproof mascara, but I guess my makeup broke it down during the filming of it, so I'm sorry you had to look at that. But anyways, I'm gonna stop here. It's going to continue with part 2 next week. So if you're interested in seeing what I have to kind of lay out for you as to what I learned about everything, what I learned about myself, I feel like it was really important. And I didn't want to edit it out. That's why I'm making it as its own like video. So thank you for listening, and thank you for watching up until now. And I will see you guys with part 2 next week. Take care.